We need to be able to have conversations without feeling like we're going to say something that gets us thrown in jail because people happen to be offended.
Skepticism. Do you know what you believe?
All right, dudes, welcome back to Pangburn Hangout. Today we're going to be chilling with Alexander. He is one of our official Pangburn skeptics. And he is our psychology guy practicing in the field. And sorry, I got distracted by my phone. And yeah, we like to wrestle with topics of philosophy, and psychology, and anything kind of scientifically related to the mind. Yeah, I feel a little bit slow right now because I had a hard run this morning. Get out there, keep working out, folks. Gotta keep it up. Gotta catch them all, Pokemon. Okay, I'm gonna turn on this. Okay, good. And we're gonna get some chess rolling as usual. And Alexander will be with us in just a couple minutes. So I will provide you with radio hits from the 1950s. Oh, my love, my darling. No. My mouth is red. Wow. That's what this did to my tongue? Am I drinking poison? I look like Joffrey when he died in Game of Thrones. Yeah, this is my flavored water. No sugar. It's the tears of children, dyed blood color to make it even better. Okay, let's get some chess going before my brain explodes. I've been on a roll lately. So we'll see what happens here. This person's ranked higher than me. My ranking isn't really correct on here, I don't think. Interesting. What up, Shawnee?
Hello?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going. I finally have a spare moment.
Oh, that's good. Just so you know, we're getting a bit of a feedback on your end.
I'm not on speakerphone, so...
Oh, we're hearing like the delayed response.
That's odd. Let me just...
What up, Alex?
Not much. Just and hi. How are you?
Good. Doing good. How was the weekend?
Yeah, it was fine. Pretty uneventful, but it was okay.
Yeah. Uneventful is
How was yours?
good sometimes.
True.
Mine was great. I went over and did a little hike on an island that's very close to Vancouver, and yeah, I think I did 13,000 steps yesterday, so I was proud of myself.
Oh wow. Oh, awesome.
So got a little exercise, did some thinking. Of course, yeah, almost every day I'm working on some type of writing, but trying to get my book completed, but also not trying to rush. So I put in an hour or two per day. So yeah.
Yeah, so I saw your post that or some of your posts that it's coming along.
Yeah, definitely. Really happy with what has emerged with this book, and I think it very much underlines, the metaphor of how I think about the emergent properties of the mind. And then also I offer an explanation to the the fundamental unanswered piece of consciousness. So that's the book, and there will be a peer review paper that will be submitted along with the book as well. So
Cool.
yeah. And how about you, Sean? What did you do this weekend?
This weekend I pretty much worked. I finished reading a biography. Started kind of reading a piece of fiction to kind of break up the monotony between two biographies back to back.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, I do that often too with books. Like, I'll read sometimes 25% at a time and rotate between two books. And it's cool to do that on the same topic too. Like if you're reading on quantum mechanics or something, switching between two different perspectives or ways of looking at the scientific realities of the is aspect of these topics.
I find the biographies from time to time tend to inspire or at least put the idea in my head that I see one perspective and then I start down another rabbit hole and then start reading a bit more along those lines of the person that I was reading about. Like, for example, I just finished Carl Jung's autobiography.
Nice.
So then I got a chance to go to a bookstore and I bought a bunch of stuff on Celtic Babylon myths and got a copy of Beowulf and the Tao Te Ching and the spiritual writings of Soren Kierkegaard to kind of, that's kind of where Jung's book where I springboard off of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Alex, just speaking on this just before we get into whatever you want to talk about today, but what are some inspirational writings, even if they're not books, but even whole books or quotes or authors or thinkers, who's kind of inspired you in that way?
I guess just generally with psychology, Jung would be one, though I'm not as familiar with some of his work as I'd like to be. Freud, and not in the what you might call like typical, like all the kind of weird stuff sense. Like some of his stuff is legitimately very good.
Yeah.
I've been reading more from May and Emmy van Derzen, both excellent in clinical psychology, particularly from like a philosophical existential lens. And then there's this one, because I always go back to this. There's this one woman. I'd have to look up her name. She might be like Swedish or something, but she did a TED Talk a couple years ago because she had schizophrenia for a long time, and people told her it was incurable, and they tried all these different things.
Right.
And she went to this one therapist who told her, like, why not try actually working with your hallucinations and seeing what knowledge you can garner from them.
Yes.
And through that, she basically cured herself. You
know what's an incredible thing of what you just said? I was just thinking about how, there is a practical version of that can be applied to essentially everyone, saying like, it's like people kind of accept that, it's acceptable to allow your emotions to overcome you if people laugh at you. Like if you're being laughed at, like the that, you're being, but like think of the psychological transformation that happens if someone adopts that comedy and finds humor in themselves the same way other people do. Like that's what kind of I thought of when you said that.
And I looked up her name. It's Eleanor Longden, and her TED Talk is on YouTube, and it's excellent. And she describes it much the way you just did, more from the mental health and comedy, so to speak. But that, like, these things that other people see as a problem about me could be my greatest asset if I just understand what's behind them or how to use them.
Right.
When I'm getting overwhelmed and I'm having these visions or whatever, it's telling me I'm terrified of something. It's not telling me stay away from it. It's telling me approach it properly.
Right. Yeah, that's super interesting. And Sean, you've read a lot of Nietzsche.
Yes, I've read quite a bit of Nietzsche.
Nice. And what are, I mean, I think Jordan Peterson has been a pretty transformative author for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Peterson's idea of, individual responsibility, the meaning that comes from your freedom and the ability to make choices based on situations rather than just reacting to them from a knee-jerk perspective.
Right.
And it made sense, but I wasn't going to just take it at face value, that I felt the need to go and work backward through the things that the thinkers that he worked with is developing his ideas. And of course, then I kind of sprung board off of those and read parallels or expanded upon it, I guess is one way of, I guess that's the right way of thinking about it.
And why do you think what Peterson had to say affected you so much? Was it pulling at something that you think was fundamentally there, or was this a transcending, transformative experience, taking in this information in the way that Peterson delivers it, that really it enlightened you to new, let's say, pleasurable pursuits, or were these things that existed before that?
Well, like I had said previously, I think in one of our conversations, I was a psychology student already before I discovered Peterson, but I was also going through some pretty, what would you say, some rough times of things, and I was kind of letting those kind of overshadow me to the point where I was I was less in control of things than I could have been, and was heading down a road I really, looking back, which should not have gone down. And it was a transformative experience, because it was like, here you have these funny memes of that Kathy Newman interview. Yeah. And like Peterson had said in, previous discussions, they go for the controversy, stay for the content. And by staying with the content, it was like, these things make sense, makes more sense than what I'm being taught. And then it was like, okay, well, where did all these ideas come from? And that's where the working backwards and then kind of expanding on those ideas and trying to, work forward based on that kind of thing.
Right. Interesting.
To go off of what you're saying, Sean, and I want to be able to bring Sri John in here too, but this isn't where I thought we were going today. I had a topic kind of prepared in my mind, but I like this. For me, I think it's so important, and I think Peterson would agree with this, though I haven't personally read any of his stuff yet, that it's important for people to be psychologically and philosophically consistent. And you can believe whatever you want to believe, I suppose, but believe something, know why you believe it, and act accordingly. And I think a lot of people just don't know what they think. So props to you for doing the research and not stopping with him and going to his sources too. We all should do that.
I think what you're talking about is becoming incongruent and integrated as an individual, that not only do you have to say things, but you have to to act them out, and you have to bring what you say and what you think and what you to burn off because you want to become genuine, and you do that and it is a transformative process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And I would say part of that is certainly there are going to be times in that transformation, or even afterwards, just in life, where you say and do things that are inconsistent with what you believe or what you claim to believe or whatever. And you have to either note those things, or when they're pointed out to you, recognize and admit your own hypocrisy.
And then adjust yourself accordingly. That's absolutely correct. It's like right now I'm pursuing second master's, going into counseling as I guess a what would you say? It's a plan B, because the plan A was to start a PhD program in clinical psychology, but it's been very, very difficult, more difficult than I thought it would be. And there are some classes within that's their goal, is to transform you. You may not even agree with the philosophies that they're trying to align you with. And so
I've been there, Sean.
yeah, and so what I'm trying to do is to be as congruent as possible. Is be like, okay, there's two ways I could react to this, right? I could either be just a disagreeable SOB about the whole thing, or I could try to take something valuable from the experience, and that's, learning the arguments that they're making to the best of my ability to be honest about their opinion, so that way that we can come to some sort of genuine consensus about it, rather than just again, getting rid of the knee-jerk reactions to things.
Sean, when you mentioned you met some difficulty, what can you describe that a little bit?
What do you mean?
Well, you said that it was difficult.
At what point?
Well, you said the process of becoming a clinical
PhD.
Yeah, getting your PhD.
Well, they're extremely competitive programs, so you're competing with about 4 or 5 other people.
Okay.
I've been out of the academic circle of going from like master's to PhD, to where there was 6 months where I was just putting in applications and hoping to get interviews, and that didn't happen. And so, because it's extremely competitive, that it's taking a lot longer than I would have liked it to be. And it goes to show that what we're trying to do is competitive, to the sense that it can be discouraging, and it can be disheartening when you've put out, say, like 10, 11, 12 applications to schools, and like in one school's case, I got denied like twice from the same school. And I even reached out to the professor and said, I looked at your research, things that you're interested in and what you're doing, and what my interests are from a research perspective are parallel and align well with one another. And they agree that, yeah, they do align, but there's just certain things that I'm lacking that kind of is a hindrance.
So, and is it, if you don't mind saying, like, what did they say was lacking?
Research experience, as far as like doing actual, like, looking at gathering sample populations, testing, hypothesis testing, and all of that goes along with it. It's far more complicated than just writing a paper about a topic and doing background research.
Sure.
My not to go maybe too deep in this tangent, but my experience was much the same, Sean. I tried to apply to doctoral programs for clinical psychology for quite a while as well. Got denied from many places, and though I didn't actually end up talking to any of the professors, I think it was much the same, that I didn't have extensive research background. Part of it being because I was applying pretty close to out of undergrad, and partially because during that actual undergrad, I had another major. Trav knows I did theater for a long time, so I didn't have the time to do the research I should have done. And that's how I kind of ended up in counseling, which is where I have my master's, because they didn't require quite as much research, and I wanted to do treatment with clients anyway. I didn't necessarily want to spend hours and hours of my week doing research, so it almost worked out. But there is indoctrination that I had to dodge.
That to contend with.
Yeah, and I can't speak to the extent this is true of clinical psychology, but I found in counseling there's a clear perspective, social perspective, political perspective, et cetera, that most counselors share, and that depending on what program you go to, they want you to share as well, and they will do a pretty hard job of trying to get that into your classes. So I had to find a lot of ways to, like you were saying, take the appropriate knowledge from it, but also navigate to a point that I could express what I needed to express and also not fail.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed too is, and this has a lot to say about the natures of very difficult conversations, especially with people that you disagree with, is you're able to sharpen your arguments to the point where you get rid of a lot of the dead weight that comes along with your arguments. Like once you understand your argument, you understand the other argument, and all of your as Travis would call it, the history behind the ideas that need to be trimmed off, that you can navigate the discussion space to a degree that they really can't argue against, let's say. Maybe that's an appropriate way of thinking about it, because in some of the class discussions I have, I dissent quite regularly, especially in my multicultural counseling class, where the textbook is very accusatory in a soft tone, and there's some things in there that are absolutely reprehensible, but it's like, I don't agree with this point based upon this right, and lay out the argument. Most of the reaction I get is basically the death glare, even though they can't really argue against the point.
Right.
Well, and I would hope at the very least, and I don't know your school or your professors or anything, but I would hope that among your professors and peers you have honest interlocutors. In my program I found some, but I found a lot that were not honest. And this is just my approach. I know a lot of people would disagree with it, but at a certain point you just can't do much with some people. And I've seen many conversations Trav's had on his YouTube channel and on Discord and things like that, where some people it's just like after 20 minutes you're banging your head against a wall.
So luck, I've been lucky that most of the class discussions I kind of able to remain silent. It's in the discussion board parts of the assignments that I find where you might have somebody that might say, well, your point is valid here, but I disagree. But there's a lot of, you're a white male and you can't really speak to this experience. And it's like, first of all, my gender and my ethnicity have really nothing to do with the conversation, and so it's kind of like, it's like we're having to do this cultural autobiography, which I think is a good exercise in telling the truth, because nobody likes to look at their life experiences, especially when there's things in there that, don't exactly paint you in the best light. And so to be honest about that is I would say that's the best exercise in learning how to tell the truth and to be honest, especially about your own faults, and not try to overshine your virtues and try to darken the faults, let's say. But it's just kind of strange to me that the default position is that your ethnicity or your sex or your gender identity or your sexual proclivity is the main important thing about somebody rather than their character.
Well, I don't know where you live or much about you, Sean. Just met you today. We can chat more maybe offline. But based on everything you're saying, if I ever find a client who's moving to your area needs somebody, I'd recommend them to you in a heartbeat.
Yeah, man. It's a others loss, the educational institutions that haven't taken you on yet, and I'm sure they will make offers soon.
Well, there's one school that's considered historically black college. It's Virginia State University,
Yeah.
and they have one professor who is a personality psychologist, and that's where my research interest lies. So it's kind of like, well, I'm willing to I'm willing to take what I can to learn what I can if this person's willing to supervise me and allow me to really delve into some of the research questions that I have about certain things. And, maybe, I'll come out better for it, which is, that's the optimistic take.
Yeah. I think that's great.
I think you will. It's what you make of it.
Well, yeah, it's, it's funny. I finished reading, or not reading, but when I took the theories of counseling class and especially reading like Glasser and Frankel. Glasser and Frankel are really, I would say, really good existential psychologists and even philosophers to a degree. But it's right. It's how I choose to react to any given situation. That's where the idea of
You guys still there? Oh, okay.
I lose audio?
No, no, you're there.
Okay. All right. Well,
I think you're cutting in and out, or maybe it's just my end.
Me or Sean?
I stopped hearing both of you actually. Oh, okay. I probably just have to reconnect here.
I'm not getting anything.
There we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay, good. Nice. I wasn't hearing Sean either. I see Sean was trying to talk. So
I think he's reconnecting.
So what did you originally have planned for today, Alex?
Well, my original plan was that we'd pick up where we touched on at the end of last week. We were going to spend time today on ethics in psychology and mental health research, either animals, humans, both. And of course, if people had any thoughts or questions or anything about that, we can go there. Or if, anyone liked the conversation that was happening, I'm happy to flip gears. I don't really care.
Yeah, no, I think, I liked what we were talking about, some of these, brick walls that some of us seem to come up against in our educational journeys. And also just like, the experience of, applying, reapplying, and then getting in contact with the professor and being like, I'm just not getting it. Like what exactly is missing here? I think that's, it's pretty interesting to me, the whole process.
I'll say for me, well, I think that's certainly a challenge, and then what happens in classes and the whole indoctrination piece of that, which I could go on for hours about. But one of the other things that always kind of concerns me, and I'm curious if anyone else has had to do this, in applying for some places, you have to write these bonus statements, not just your personal statement, but often it's like, statement of diversity or cultural exposure or whatever.
Right.
And I don't inherently like that. I get what they're going for, but given my demographic and the life that I've lived, I can cite certain things, but I know in truth, just by being knowledgeable of the world right now, that it's not what they're looking for. What I would cite as experience would be insufficient. So I feel a need to conflate and over exaggerate my life experience and present it in a way that feels false to me
Right.
in order to get some kind of acceptance or approval. But then at the same time, you feel like you need that approval because you don't get in the program if you don't.
Right.
So it's constantly a battle to deal with, of being true to yourself and getting, it sounds manipulative, but getting what you need from people, frankly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that I've been lucky. I haven't had to make any statements on diversity or any of that sort. So that's I would say that's a plus in my favor. It's just a letter of intent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I have nothing wrong with that kind of thing inherently, but the idea that my statement of my experience can be in some way insufficient is odd to me. If you want to critique your writing style isn't good, or you didn't dig deep enough into this, okay, fine, that's a fair critique. I would expect that of a higher education program. But to say that it's not enough experience or enough exposure, well, I'm sorry, live my life for 20 whatever years, and you tell me.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. It's like I was telling a couple friends of mine and my wife that this cultural autobiography that I have to write, where I have to be honest about things. It's like I know what it's like to deal with the trauma of being bullied and everything else from where I grew up, and it's like I get to relive those experiences and to be honest about them in a sense, to be like, just because I'm white and I'm male doesn't mean that I'm, privileged, or I've got more of whatever it is that I supposedly have more of than somebody else. It's like my childhood and the things that I experienced was absolutely appalling.
Right.
And so how would I be unempathetic or ineffective as a counselor, given the fact that I've gone through that kind of nonsense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny to me, and this goes to, I guess, more counseling than psychology, but the whole thing about the field is it's not your job to necessarily interpret or frame other people's experiences, though there's some of that in there. Their life is their life, and you facilitate and guide them through it, and ultimately they come to their own conclusions. So while we need to be knowledgeable of all these different things that people could go through, at a certain point it's their life. You take them at their word.
Well, yeah, that's the positive regard that you're supposed to take your clients into, for one. Two, the idea that they're the expert in the phenomenology of their world, that's second. But to basically throw out like everything else that goes along with it, like it's like CBT and DBT are considered the two best evidence-based practices for solving problems in the short term. However, they want to throw everything else out with it about things that are objectively true versus just their subjective nature of their worldview.
And whether it end up being part of today or it's part of a future Monday psychology that we do, it's probably worth having an extended conversation on that. I'm with you that I don't think those methods alone are sufficient, but that is just the world we live in.
Yeah.
And how, just examining these methods, how are we going to improve on them?
First of all, the thing about counseling or methods when it comes to dealing with clients is you map out objectives that you can measure. measured improvements, incremental improvements that you can measure, that you can say, hey, this is an improvement here from where you were, say, like 2 weeks ago or a month ago. And there's different approaches. There's no universal best approach for everything. Sometimes dream analysis works. Sometimes, just bare bones CBT, challenging thoughts is enough. Or, I'm a big fan of choice theory and reality therapy. So it's like wants, needs, and what are you doing that isn't working out for you or anybody else around you, and what can you do to evaluate and develop something new that you can work with that's going to be meaningful for you and everybody else around you, kind of thing. It's based on what's being reported and what are the problems you're trying to solve.
And we need sources of objectivity, but also to embrace the subjectivity where it exists. For instance, someone might come in and they tell you that they were abused as a child, and you're thinking, oh, that's horrible, we're going to have to work through that. And your client tells you, it really doesn't bother me anymore. I don't feel a need to talk about it. And granted, they could be trying to, cover it up or repress it or whatever, but maybe that's true. Maybe they legitimately don't have a problem with it. You have to be subjective to the client and go, all right, you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to talk about it. By the same token, I don't need to necessarily measure, oh, you cried 4 times this week and 3 times this week, that's improvement. That's helpful. I could also say, do you feel better? And if they tell me yes, I mean, I have to evaluate, are they trying to appease me or do they really mean it? But the outcome can be just as subjective as what comes in. I mean, the entire input of your client for the whole session is subjective. So the output's going to be subjective to a degree too. And we just have to evaluate how comfortable we are with that, how much we want objective, how much we want subjective. But to try to put everything down in paperwork and goals, and did they do this number of times, people just don't work that way.
Well, I agree with you to the degree that it depends on where the environment where this is happening. Like, say, in a private practice, it is going to be primarily subjective. I work in a psychiatric hospital. In fact, I work in the maximum security unit of a psychiatric hospital. So the goals are a little bit more measurable because
Of
you're
course.
a team of people that are working with an individual, and that doesn't just include put what would you say, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, social workers, nurses, and medical doctors all on a team dealing with these individuals. But there's people that work on the wards and on the units that these individuals basically are living in for X amount of time, depending on the nature of the crimes that they were acquitted of due to their mental state at the time of their offense. And so there's going to be a bit more, what would you say, parallel documentation where you can effectively kind of measure those improvements.
Of course. I mean, an environment is certainly going to matter. And like you're saying, in certain contexts, I mean, even just community mental health, that happens a lot too, where you need those objective standards. And I fully support that. I also advocate that, particularly if you're in a private practice, but even to some extent in those highly regulated places, you do have to leave some room for the person to just be, and partially because I longer rant, but the way some of these institutions operate, I think is very flawed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like there's an ethical question for some of these places, like with our patients. How far down the rabbit hole do you go before, let's say, they get discharged and as much as the can of worms, how far open do you put the can of worms, and then they get discharged, and then you do more harm than you do good. And so there's it's an extremely complex issue, even though I take issue with the idea of housing, stabilization, discharge, and then 2 months down the road they come back and it's admission
every time.
I would like to see the revolving door stop revolving. That would be, I think, the ultimate goal that we should be working toward. But unfortunately, with state-run facilities, bureaucracy kind of tends to get in the way of that.
And what would be the difference if it was not state-run?
I would imagine that we would probably not be as constrained into the methods and approaches that we could use to try to actually treat the problems rather than just treat the symptoms of the problem.
No, you'd have more You may have more flexibility, and depending on how much funding and investments you have to maybe get to root causes, but you can also run into some more pressing issues, as in never solving the problem as well, because you're chasing something else. So it has to be very carefully balanced.
Of course. I think it's right that those state-run things tend to be very limiting because they require so much administrative, which eats up a lot of people's time, and also everything has to be through some evidence-based system that's been tested and is approved by the state, and et cetera, et cetera. And for some people and for some symptoms that will work, and other times it won't. Kind of offshoot, like something that I really like, and I don't know if you've heard of this, Sean, or anyone else has, but there's a kind of therapy that's been used in different parts of Asia called Morita, which is usually meant for anxiety, but it can be used for other things as well. It's basically designed for people in hospitals, and the goal is strip them away from everything, kind of slowly give them their life back, and basically teach people on how to be functional in society and to deal with whatever symptoms that come appropriately. You're not necessarily trying to cure, you're trying to teach coping and adapting. And it's been pretty successful for them, but no one ever tries it in the West. It's never been considered. It's never gotten a lot of research. And I'm not saying that that's the answer. I'm just saying it's an example of something that works in a heavily regulated institution that we don't even think to try. It's a shame.
Is Sean talking, or are we just hearing static?
I think it's static.
Oh, okay.
No, I hadn't heard of that approach at all. That seems like something very try, especially for managing with anxiety. Unfortunately, though, and I can only speak to the facility I'm at. The most common diagnoses are bipolar 1, schizoaffective, schizophrenia, borderline, and narcissistic and antisocial personality disorders.
Oh, and I mean that's going to be in any hospital. There are variabilities, but on average, yeah, of course, it's going to be those.
And the way that, and see, our group therapy setup is, it's not even run by the psychology department. The rehab department does that. So what they do is they just say, okay, well, we're going to have certain disciplines cover certain groups. So like psychology always hits with anger management. I deal with NGRI and restoration, psychoeducation, to either get people competent to go to court to face their charges, or I do the psychoeducation part that teaches them about the NGRI laws, the process for gradual release, but I don't think that it serves them enough to just be like, well, this is the process and all of this. I asked people the last time I taught that class who knew what their diagnosis was, and everybody could answer that I'm diagnosed with this. I said, okay, so what does that mean? And none of the patients could really tell me what that meant. So I've taken it upon myself to kind of teach a base psychopathology type thing of like, these are what these different diagnoses are, so that way you can understand, or maybe things may have went off the rails for you, so that way if they get discharged, relatively quickly, that it's like, okay, what are the signs when you start to notice the symptoms are coming back? Like, say for somebody with schizophrenia, and then if they say, well, this is what it's like when the symptoms manifest, it's like, okay, now that you know this, what do you think you are empowered to do when you're out in the community? Maybe prevent relapse. And
I've had to do the same with clients, and we've had a couple weeks on this Discord in the past, back in 2020, where we would talk about personality disorders, what we called it, psychopathy, but personality things, and depression and things like that, because a lot of people, even just in the public sphere, who don't necessarily have these diagnoses, do not understand what they mean from a clinical perspective.
No,
and it is unfortunate.
It really is. It's like, I remember getting into a bit of a discussion when I co-facilitated an NGRI group when I first started working in the psychology department at the place I work, because the lady is one of those certain political affiliations and ideologies that typically are found in our field. And she's like, I wish we could rename antisocial personality disorder, because of when you think antisocial from, like, say, a layman's perspective, it's somebody that goes to a party. They think of the person that goes to a party and they'd rather hang out with the dog than they would the other people.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with hanging out with Fluffy in the corner, because I don't really feel comfortable in large social gatherings, so I'll go hang out with the house dog or the house cat.
Fluffy in the corner. That's what she said, by the way. Just thought I should throw that in there.
There you go. But no, most people don't realize that what we're talking about is behaviors that go against social norms and violate other people's rights. It's impulsivity to an extreme that it actually can cause harm to oneself or others around them. And then there is predatory behaviors that are also associated with that. And, of course, the more exploitative and predatory you are, that does tilt you toward getting a psychopathic personality diagnosis on top of your antisocial personality diagnosis. And so that's one of the things that's also really interesting about antisocial personality is you can find people with APD that are, they're not as
functional.
I'm
asking, are you going for like functional people that are they're part of society, they do normal things, you might not even know that they...
Well, there certainly those types exist, but from like where I work at, I've met people with antisocial personality disorder that would be fine people if they weren't resentful and bitter and just out to just make everybody fucking miserable because they're miserable. It's like I have a patient with cerebral palsy and antisocial personality disorder, and his behaviors are just because of his disability. Everybody else can do things that he can't, and no matter how hard he tries, he can't do those things. So he's like, well, I'll teach. He comes from, a Christian background, so it's like, I'm going to do these things because it'll teach you and teach God to do this to me, kind of thing. And so that's why he thinks it's appropriate that if things don't go his way and that he gets angry, that it's okay to try to strangle a physician or threaten to do bodily harm to the judge or to an attorney or any of that. And these are the behaviors that,
let's say let's say hypothetically you have someone like that. You don't have to talk in regards to this patient specifically, but when you have someone like this, what how do you go about providing them care?
So psychiatry tends to give medication to deal with mood stabilization, so that way elevation of certain moods obviously gets prevented. They like to use DBT for mindfulness meditation or mindfulness to keep a person in the present, so that way they don't start jumping ahead to the future or ruminating on the past, which can get them going and get them riled up. But to me, we're not addressing what I would say is, the existential crisis of the disability, and trying to help somebody figure out, well, what's something meaningful that could maybe make you less spiteful, resentful, and hateful, and doing these things just because, well, that'll teach you.
Right.
I would agree with that. And I'll say this, and then I want to jump over to our friend casually Srijan here, see if because his name keeps lighting up, if he has something. But this is why, and particularly why I want to do private practice work, and I don't really want to work in a hospital or community long term or anything, because I want more of the freedom to do that kind of work. I like to think of things in the kind of philosophy personality spectrum. What is this person's worldview? How did they come to it? And then if we want to talk about diagnosis, let's look at certain personality traits. I use a special book for that. And I think that that's a very effective way of working. That's not to say people can't take medication or can't do CBT skills. And I do some of that with clients because I do think it's helpful. But at a certain point, to what Sean's saying, you gotta go into I think you have to go into the other stuff, or you're teaching them to manage, not improve.
Mm-hmm.
That's my big gripe, but give someone else a chance to chime in.
Srijan, how's it going today?
Oh, absolutely the same as yesterday.
Oh, he's got anti-personality disorder. Lock him up.
How dare you be consistent from one day
Exactly.
to the next? It's
What are you
just
thinking?
it's just upsetting.
Yeah, it really offends me.
I'm gonna pretend I understand what you are saying.
We're just joking with you. We're just joking that, like, being the same today as you were yesterday is a bad thing or is mental health, and it's not. We're just messing with you. You're fine.
As far as we can tell, you're fine. But the
Oh.
next word that comes out of your mouth, we're gonna have another diagnosis ready.
Octopussy.
You kill me, man.
Good job.
Very
Good
good.
pick.
Yeah. It's a man who knows what he wants.
I remember the topic is psychology, right? I remember reading Dostoevsky in July. That was right after I read Marx. So that was a big jump from I read the Communist Manifesto. And then I read Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. And that was such a great book. It's one of my favorite books. It's especially the scene it's in one scene that Dostoevsky writes. I can literally resonate with that scene, action by action. I did exactly what the protagonist who committed the crime did exactly, and I've done it many times too, and I could relate with that. It's such a great book. It's a classic in India too. My grandfather knows about it.
Huh.
You're talking about Raskolnikov, right?
Yeah, Raskolnikov.
So to pivot a little bit, but I think the psychology of this is very interesting, especially because you said you relate to him. Would you, or I mean, would anyone in this conversation think to diagnose Raskolnikov with some mental disorder?
No.
I mean, all you're seeing are the potentially the emergent qualities of his imagination. You don't necessarily know, I think, until you're in a clinical setting, even whether this person was pulling everyone's leg, if you're just reading text.
One of the problems that Raskolnikov's character had, it was, the Christianity and atheism angle that it had, which only thing that I have a problem with, which he could not find meaning. That was the problem, right? He could not. He found out that there was every possible reason to kill that lady. Yeah, so he had no possible reason not to do it, so he did it, and I don't think that's reason enough for me. That's the distinction.
I I think we're on the same page. That I would just personally, I would agree with you that he has mistaken concepts of morality and how to best act upon it, but I don't think that makes him deranged or ill from what we can tell. I mean, any more or less than anybody else.
Yeah, yeah. If like he was a smart guy, if any smart guy would the scene where he comes down with his friend Razmukhin, he comes down and the policeman ask him, "Did you see the labor? If you didn't, did you see the labor?" And he says, "Yes, I saw the labor." And then his friend says, "You must not be the criminal because you said that you saw the labor, and if you really were the criminal, you would have said I hadn't seen anything." Then he says, "No, I that would be that would be a foolish thing. That would be, if the criminal was really foolish, then he would do this. Now I have said that I have seen those labels. That means that they will think that I am not the criminal because of the same thinking that you have." Yeah, I have done that same thing many times. Yeah, the same thing in different contexts. Of course, I've done that in like classroom punishments, or my teacher scolding me, and I'm saying that I had done this to that extent, but not to the complete extent which I had actually done. Right. So these little things that you could relate with Dostoevsky were really really great, and I think that's what makes the Crime and Punishment such a classic novel.
Yeah, of course. If and I think this is true of literature in general in a lot of ways, but I mean, if Raskolnikov was written as someone who was just deranged or entirely amoral or, whatever, it wouldn't have the lasting appeal that it does, because the more you write something people can't relate to, we don't care.
Yeah, exactly. The same thing that happens with remakes and stuff like movies. Like they make movies with unrelatable characters. Like they literally have made an American Pie women remake, which I'm sorry that I had to watch it. I want my 1.5 hour back. Unrelatable. Yeah, that's so unrelatable. We had a Ghostbusters remake. Yeah, we have characters that, if you put a dog that's more relatable to dogs than the character that's the protagonist. So these characters which Dostoevsky has, they're so relatable, and with Nietzsche, it's a whole another thing. I haven't read Beyond Good and Evil, but
I'm
but it's not a novel sort of thing, right? And then too, you can still. Yep.
sorry. Oh, were you?
Were you saying something?
Oh, I would say I was just saying I'm revisiting Good and Evil. I'm about halfway through right now. Just
Is it good?
um it let me this is a note I wrote down after the first half. We owe nothing to failed dogma, Friedrich. We owe nothing to failed dogma. So that's my general response to the first half.
Watch Jordan Peterson.
I use the term cacophony a lot, but there is a cacophony of self-destroying, self-eating ideas in that. If
You send that one sentence to Jordan Peterson, he'll make a 3-hour lecture of it.
No, it'll be 7.
Yeah.
It'll be 7 volumes. No, because I wanted to revisit. I had read pieces of that book before, just some interesting segments. But so yeah, as a whole, it's like I can see why Jordan likes this author so much, because he speaks to Jordan's thought pretzel thinking, the way Jordan thinks, and I see that, and it's very interesting. But I think when you start writing down the ideas that are had, and then later on stumbling upon different proclamations and rules and different things that are made, you start being like, well, wait a sec. If we jump back here, you said in this rule that this applies in this, and you excluded this area, but you didn't exclude this area, but now you're excluding it, so that your first claim has been kind of demolished here, and rightfully so, but it's not really visited. It's just like has happened, and it leaves the reader in this like, well, why wasn't that addressed? It just happened, and it's like, it's kind of like you're sitting across from Nietzsche, and he's looking at you reading his book, and then you look up and he's like, he'll say like, well, how does that grab you? But that part isn't in the book. I don't know. What do you guys think?
But the problem with that is, he died so young. He was like, he became mad before he was 45. That's like, if just imagine what would have happened if he hadn't become mentally ill, and he would have met Hitler and thought he would have criticized Hitler. Maybe he would have met Einstein, and the great things that could have happened didn't happen because he went mad, and he died by some crazy thing.
I mean, maybe, right? It all depends on like which direction his work went in, because you're right, he could have been, inspired by Einstein and other people, and maybe had a conversation with Hitler that changed his ideas. But also he could have been the next cult leader, right? Just by looking at how the mind works, he had I think he has the ability to talk someone into his cult, no problem. So I think it's hard to make that inference.
I think he was, no, I don't think so. I think he was more of a loner guy kind of thing. He liked solitude so much, he wouldn't have been in a cult. He would have despised cults.
No,
I think by cult he means more a cult of ideas, like a certain, everyone believes what he believes, not necessarily that he's like, I'm going to start a community.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that type of Heaven's Gate thing.
I got what.
Oh, okay.
I got what
the Earth is being
saying.
Recycled.
I just want to make sure you two are on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got what he's saying, but I'm saying that literally he wouldn't have been for, he first of all, he wasn't much of a people's person, with ideas or without ideas.
Yeah.
Only thing that he liked was music, right? And that too he stopped liking after he had some stupid thing.
Yeah,
so he wouldn't. I don't think he would have, told people that go follow this is the ideas. I just don't think he would have done that.
Yeah, I mean, I just get well, and I mean, like, you know how Jordan's like diehard fans, like if you make any critique that kind of sounds liberal to them, how they'll just lose their fucking mind.
Oh
It
yeah, that's
happens
funny.
with the Sam Harris audiences too, and the Richard Dawkins audiences. If you say like, there are some conclusions being made about climate change that are fear mongered for no reason, the Richard Dawkins audience will go, "Oh my God, we got a conspiracy theorist! Oh my God, and it doesn't need to be that way."
Yeah, just look at it.
So
Just
I'm
look at
talking
it right
about
now.
cult like in that way with Nietzsche.
No, exactly. Just look at it right now, right? We have two people. Just take two people, not on the different side, on the same side. Take two people like, just take Eric Weinstein and Sam Harris, and on the other side, you can take Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder. These two people and that two people fundamentally disagree. Ben Shapiro doesn't think that the election was stolen. Steven Crowder does think the election was stolen. Eric Weinstein thinks Trump's Twitter account shouldn't have been banned. Sam Harris, who surprisingly thinks it should have been banned.
Yeah, I don't think that's surprising because Sam has labeled Donald Trump as the devil.
Yeah, I know that, but Sam Harris, I thought he was, I expected better from him. If Hitchens was alive, he would have smashed it.
Hitchens would have absolutely annihilated Sam Harris on that point. But
Hitchens,
you don't masquerade as being like an arbiter or a supporter of free speech and kind of sit there and praising the owner of Twitter, CEO of Twitter, of thank you for getting rid of Batman because I can't stand it anymore. It's like, you're not what you claim to be. So stop acting like it and start acting like the person that wants to see, only anyone who has ideas that they detest, and if they're that one detests, and their audience becomes too big or so large, that person ought to be disqualified. It's actually the enemy of the war of ideas. It's the antithesis to it. You want to have Donald Trump and his audience intermingling with people who are coming at them with critiques. And Twitter is a great place for that. And this is why Jack is having, and Jack knows this, but he's having this weird existential crisis about it. Like, was it the right thing to do? Come on, guys, tell me, how many virtue points can I get from talking to you guys about it? Like, was I right, guys? No, the reason why you're having this emergence is because you made a mistake. You slapped Donald Trump's posts with all of these things, and probably rightfully so, these fact checking things, and this fact is being disputed and whatever. But yeah, Donald Trump has won. Donald Trump beat Twitter. He eighth world Mario Brothers. Donald wins. he fucking wins. He triggered you, Jack, with his ideas, the ideas that you detest and others who cry about it. He triggered you, and you lost the war of ideas.
And not only he lost,
you kicked him off the
Sam
battlefield.
Harris lost.
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins lost. Daniel Dennett.
Everyone
These older
loses.
people, they're supposed to have some wisdom and shit. When they see Trump, it's like their wisdom card gets thrown off. I don't know what happens to them. These people become Hulk all of a sudden.
You'll notice.
Then we have to.
Yeah. You're right.
Then we have to show them a picture of Hillary Clinton so they can become Bruce Banner again.
Yeah, but you're showing what it is this type of crap in human history shows you who the actual skeptics are, and who are just simply governed by their emotional states. Like if and ones who, it's almost synonymous with the ones who can't laugh at themselves. It's this weird idea I've been kind of wrestling with, and seeing that the world is just covered with people who can't laugh at themselves. They just, if something happens that someone might laugh at them for, they just lose it. They can't handle it. They can't handle that idea of being the laughing stock of everyone, or the laughing stock of someone, where they really could be just engaging in the laughter too. But I think there's some kind of, it's just emotion gets in the way of thinking, starts overcoming people, and they want to feel like they're on a team, group identity, all of that crap I put under the social extremist umbrella. And it leads to, the emergence of these strange, anti-human tweets that are just not supposed to be in the wheelhouse of these thinkers.
That's what frustrating, like we have, like Sam Harris was, he was supposed to be, like even he did this is a big divide, because this is a question of what incites violence and what doesn't, and that hasn't been ever done before. And Twitter is clearly wrong on this. Twitter is actually wrong on this. Whoever loses, Twitter clearly has already lost, because they have Jack sent thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to BLM supporters and stuff like that, who called for violence, and he bans Trump's account even after Trump conceded the election.
Yeah. And Robish Dogman in the Twitch chat says, wrong on this one, bro. Trump incited a mob. I don't think there's any evidence that he incited any kind of violence. From what I can see, Trump's ideas have been consistent to be law and order, do not deface public property, do not break laws. I can see that crystal clear. I don't know why some people can't, but I think people look at it through an emotional lens and they say, well, I can see how someone could take that statement and apply it to their terrorist act. It's like, well, you can do that with almost every presidential speech that's ever been made, tying this act of violence to that president because he said something along the lines of, we need to be strong in these times against the enemies of freedom, or something like that. And someone would be like, yeah, what he really meant was going to the Capitol building and taking it over.
Wondering the same question.
I froze?
Oh.
Yeah.
And now you're unfroze.
Oh, weird. Yeah, so yeah, but I disagree. I don't think Trump incited the mob. I just wanted to respond to Robish Dogman there.
Well, like, consider the fact that he said these things, he said, we'll go to the Capitol, we'll march it, and after that was over, he said, okay, I wanted this election to be fair, and this shit happened. And even after he said all these things, then too Twitter suspended and banned his account. And that was, I think that was Twitter did it on purpose, because it wanted more evidence. They thought that Trump would incite violence, and he didn't. Then they had they banned his account on the purpose that the tweet that was already deleted by Twitter, and Twitter knows this.
I wonder how many of our thinkers sent messages to Jack to influence his decision. I wonder. I'd like to understand more, like who did Jack consult? Was it just his team? Did he consult, who? Like,
I don't think he considered Tim Pool.
I don't think he considered Don Jr.
I don't think he considered Trump himself.
The most popular man in the world. The greatest entertainer in the world gets kicked off a social media platform. Can you believe it?
Hey, Trump, Donald, can I ban your account?
Sorry,
how about
Alex,
no?
Sujan totally derailed everything. I'm going to blame it all on him.
Oh.
Yeah, shit.
It's fine.
It's psychology.
Yeah. Social media psychology.
But I
The bathroom
think that
wall.
he did. Like the only Democrat that came forward was Tulsi Gabbard, and she's supposed to be a Hindu. That's really ironic. She's the only Hindu standing up for free speech.
Mm.
It's where I was kind of thinking with all of this is oddly I was tracking what you guys were talking about, but in a very different way. Because you guys had kind of started with the conversation of Raskolnikov, and one of the things I was thinking about was that, you know, from my previous questions about looking at him with mental health, he's not appealing if you look at him through a disorder lens, but if you look at him through just the concept of like worldview and personality, like Sean was talking about earlier, he's much more interesting and people can grapple with that, which somehow through the course of your conversation just led me to the personality, the persona that is Donald Trump. And it's very appealing to people in a very different way, but also kind of the same way as the Raskolnikov thing. Like, people are drawn to that persona that he has, particularly the one that he presented on social media. It was very divisive. People loved it or people hated it, but that's kind of what makes it attractive, what makes it effective, what makes it relatable, or either so non-relatable that you hate it or whatever it is. Like, he's not, at least to me, and I think a lot of people probably would say, even on both sides of the aisle, he's not like some mysterious figure. He's not some deity or some total enigma. I mean, he's exactly what you see, and that's why he gets so much traction.
Mm.
Yeah, and you could also say that it's a love or hate thing. You either love him or you hate him. It's like that with him. You could see people not voting for Biden. People voted for Trump out of clear hatred. Like, consider what Biden tweeted about. My first priority is blacks, Asians, and women own small businesses. Everybody except white, right? So
Yeah.
that's what people don't like. Yeah, only the crazy left, the craziness of the Democratic Party that has been formed. That's what people hated. Yeah, like Trump could become has already become an epitome of free speech and stuff like that. They're going for free speech, and Trump, like, that was very unexpected. Even in 2016, it wasn't that bad. Hillary wasn't anti-free speech, like, but now Trump has become that free speech guy that they've they've rallied upon.
Yeah.
Well, what I appreciate from a psychological perspective is the authenticity of it. This is kind of in the humanistic lens, but like, if the ultimate goal for a person is to be authentic, to be consistent, and to be whoever it is that they are, for one, he's a freaking expert at that, because at least, I think what you see is what you get, kind of. But also, like, in the free speech vein, that's almost, and I hadn't thought about this till now, but that's almost in a way like all that I'm asking for, and I think all that he would be asking for, in the sense that, like, let people say whatever it is they want to say. Give them the chance to be authentic in the internet. You can love or hate what they say, just like you love or hate what he says.
Yeah.
Just let them be what they want to be. Again, obviously there's some small rules on that.
Yeah,
I'm not saying those shouldn't exist.
Yeah, and I've brought those rules up because people think that, I'm, and I say this many times, I'm 100% pro free speech. That does not mean I'm 100% pro freedom to harass. We have speech harassment laws that actually exist for good reason. Harassment has to be demonstrated. And there are legal qualifications for what harassment looks like and what you can be charged for with regards to harassment. Yeah, and then also the other part is freedom. It doesn't mean freedom to incite violence. It doesn't mean that anyone should be going around being able to say, guys, we all strike at this time. The things that Donald Trump was being accused of. Of course, you can't have anyone inciting violence. And we have laws against that already. But to me, that has nothing to do with freedom of speech.
Well, the problem was in this case that what is incitement of violence? And Sam Harris thinks that Trump incited violence. Steven Pinker thinks that he did. Richard Dawkins thinks that he did.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't.
That has never happened.
Yeah, it's sorry, go ahead.
It's so weird to me, and it goes to something I was saying earlier on the point with like clients that I've had, but I think this is generally true. Taking people at their word, not at their intention. And granted, we always read into intentions naturally, and we kind of have to. But I can't guarantee with any degree of accuracy that I know what you think or why you said what you said or anything beyond that unless I ask you. And so and you can look at tone of voice and stuff like that. I'm not saying don't, but look at people for what they say. And like the Trump example, for instance, I've listened to that speech again. I don't see anything in there that says violence. And I'm not going to try to read some intention. Oh, go over there actually meant kill people. I'm not going to make that assumption. I wouldn't make that assumption with anybody.
No, yeah.
Unless I have a reason to explore it. At that point, you ask them what they meant.
100%.
But and that's why. And I made a joke about this during just to some personal family and friends and such during the whole election period. What I really wanted the media to do is I wanted them to release a transcript of the debates. Mostly because I think both of the candidates are just so horrible at like speaking to people that I was like, I just want to read it, and I want to read it, and I want to evaluate the words that are there. I don't want the showmanship. I don't want the trigger words or looking at that person in the audience. Just tell me their words.
Yeah.
Then I will decide if I like those words or not.
Even if you have to get David Attenborough to read them. It's like
even better.
It's like take the words of
I'll
it
take that.
and get yeah.
Or Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman. These people are idiots. Donald Trump. Okay, yeah.
I am my husband, Joe Biden.
Wait, was that a thing?
He said that?
I think so.
I didn't know that, so thank you for that gift.
Yeah, Joe Rogan did an episode on the crazy things Joe Biden has said. I think he did one on Trump too. But yeah, it's quite
what has happened of Joe Rogan? Yeah, I haven't watched him since he went on Spotify.
Yeah, I've been watching some of his stuff. He's addicted to conspiracy, man. He gets on these bad thinking tangents. But he loves talking to his alien guys, the ones, anything to do with aliens. He's just like fascinated by, why isn't anyone talking about this event? And, there's so many explanations, just using Occam's razor, so many reasonable explanations for a lot of these things that he's like, there are no explanations for this. But, I do love the guy.
He's a nice guy, but I think he changes his opinion too much. You know,
Well, it's because they're not well founded. He's not. If he understood skepticism, he would find that he would start solidifying things because the scientific consensus is that way. Or
like he said he'd vote for Bernie, but to avoid taxes, he went to Texas. It's really weird, right? Less taxes, Texas,
Mm.
Texas.
I see what you did there.
I don't know what kind of weekend you've had, Srijan, but I mean, you're really funny today.
Srijan has
I'm
told
always
me
funny.
he wants to. You got to do some comedy, man.
Yeah.
I would love to do an
I mean, you're
episode
normally
of you
pretty
just...
good, but you're hitting it out of the park.
Yeah, I agree. It was that psilocybin trip he had last night. It's really put some things into perspective for him.
It was actually methane.
Nice.
I had it with Joe Biden.
I am my own husband. That one's interesting.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, we're all our own husband if you really think about it, right?
Well, if you really, really think about it, we are our own wives too, right? When we're single.
or not another husband.
If you're gay, yes.
Yes. I'm just laying out the carpet, Sir John, if you want to walk down it. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, gosh. Well, this has gone not where I thought it was going today.
I love eating up pieces on the chessboard. Yeah. What up, Scott?
Yeah, Scott and
What's
James still here.
Yeah. What are you guys up to? Scott usually has got some stuff going on the side.
Trying to get my countdown timer adjusted appropriately.
Nice.
Fuckers.
Do I do this sacrifice? No.
Not to totally deviate, or I don't know if Scott's here or not, but Street, John, James, Pangburn, whatever. For those who are here, I am curious on the point that I thought we were talking about today, though I don't mind it that we haven't, is like thoughts on ethics of psychological research. And in particular, I'm thinking of like a lot of studies that were done, ages ago that are now super controversial, and you can't do it because it might have a negative effect on a person.
Right.
Like, is that something that people agree with, disagree with, think needs to be revised? I have my opinions, but I know what my opinions are already.
Yeah, so can
What do
we
you mean to have some
outline
ethics?
Culture and stuff.
Can we outline, Alexander, like what studies or endeavors we're specifically talking about, and maybe just summarize them a little bit?
Sure. Well, I'll give like probably the two standard examples that most people know. There's the Milgram Experiment, being, basically pressuring people to think that they are shocking to someone to the point of execution, when in truth they aren't. It's a deception.
Right.
And then the Stanford prison study with the people assigned to play cops, people assigned to play inmates, and some of the treatment and kind of harassment that came out of that, and some serious psychological damage to the people that were in that inmate role for an extended period of time. Those two studies in particular have been incredibly influential on what we know about social psychology. The field is almost founded on them, and yet you can't do anything vaguely similar to those anymore.
Right.
That's something that I'm wondering if people know about, have an opinion on. Certainly do. I think the regulations are too strict, though I understand why they're there.
Right.
But I just think you get into rough territory once you start harming people in the process of the experimentation. I mean, that's,
of course.
I don't think there's an easy way to just, get rid of that, and if we can't discover something or figure something out without having to harm people, man, I don't know. I think morally we're just gonna have to say, okay, I guess we can't do that for this at this particular time. Maybe in the future we have ways to protect against negative harm that we could do these experiments, but until that's the case.
Right.
Yeah, of course. And I don't, and I guess to clarify, I don't, I should say, I would agree with that on the whole, we don't to harm people, and we definitely should minimize that. I think, and it depends on who's doing the research and who the institutional review board is and things like that. But there's this big thing about, oh, really, you should try to cause no harm, and deception can be very troubling for people, so you don't want to deceive them unless you really have to, kind of thing. And I mean, I think at times stuff is appropriate, and I think at other times it goes too far. Like deception, yeah, you don't want to be doing it rampantly, but a lot of times you need it. And when we talk about harm, it depends on how you're defining psychological harm. If someone is mildly distressed by something, I don't think that should at all stop us from doing it. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying go to Stanford prison level. That's probably really a bad idea. But if you did some, and I'm not framing this specifically, but if you did some lighter form of the Milgram thing, maybe you think you're causing someone mild distress, not to the point of killing them or something, I think that's okay. You kind of have to let a little bit of that slide. And you provide all the counseling and debriefing after, but it to the point was no, I think that's really,
Yeah. But he's see the they're doing this, that, and what the experiment is, how long people will wait. So they go into you guys here, if you could just a little bit administer this, and they just leave an hour, 3 hours, and everybody cracks in person. He's sitting there, and it gets to the point of leaving. Because you are caught stress and that's crack, but like, the level of the Stanford experiment with be
the community thing. I wish I had a good example that cracking. It's people might actually thirsty, or they bathroom or whatever.
Yeah.
Wait in this room. If you want to leave the room, but you can they want to sit there. Ladder. Okay.
Exactly, but it's also a thing where it's you're in the experiment. I think that's all. You can't necessarily say, "Hey, here's what we're." Sometimes pretend other thing experiment you're claiming to be even a different experiment than what you told your subjects.
I did a study where people basically have these transcripts and take like small decon, and the assessing what they thought they were assessing, but you know it was they weren't supposed to know. And I put my documentation to see that this paragraph that's not likely. Even on the dissent, you know, either that you tell people, you know, it's wrong, nothing will happen, but in reality, somebody, I'm not kind of deceptive.
Yeah. We were kind of talking the deception of you have like an and then they show up. We have a 2-inch dong. I forget. That should be criminal.
What?
What were you?
I forget who that was.
But, so was it
Same thing though. You end up in this is not what I expected. Don't
leave.
And if they force you already.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you get to the point it's like it's really just like so, and then you get there. Wait, I didn't deal with this.
Rock joke about how every day he's like they put up a whole list. It's great skit from like early 90s.
Or, I mean, in the sense, when you do that, very much enjoy. Who continue with the line? I don't mind.
It comes down to book. It's basically trying to make that it's like nothing lying. There's children as well, and no, it's obviously lies resulting in a harming. Of course, you can actually that would be the result on the child's body. I mean,
like a piece of art.
Placebo is a real thing. It just happened in
yeah.
I've come back tweeted we've been lying left-wing by you'd be like, no shit, bro.
It's the deep secret of Twitter. We do have a left wing by
or back to the the women. It's like truth is no shit.
Who thought you did?
it's not a lie that it's true, then it's your fault to be stupid.
This woman before her,
Right.
It- you know, it's like, okay, have practice kids
Oh,
before yes, like get money from her, you know, that bring somebody to get kids with. that
That's an interesting example.
yeah.
Especially when you're Chinese.
It reminds me of why, and if you guys the same thing as the opera. It's a play version of Madame Butterfly. In that the I think it still is like a Chinese woman. It's guy actually guy.
Yeah.
And so the and it's and part of the nature of the production, and it's been in different ways, but we're in very sing drama. And the French, that just totally, and they have sex multiple times, end up going to prison on her behalf.
Yeah.
And it's like whole, and part of the argument made in the end is that you were deceived in a relationship. That sucked. So it was saying,
And then it convinced because he was
did we play time the game and out of
But if I put that on stage, that would.
Well, then we have to fence. Then is he blind or not?
he's. I will say he's not blind in the show. There is, and I don't remember exactly how it is, how it goes. Kind of soliloquy. Around the geisha to pee. Does not notice. It's laid out so blatant.
Willful ignorance.
Yeah.
They have a child just borrowed from.
the whole point of that too was right to that people don't see. You know, I mean, I thought that was in is that he should have known he had what they used it as a metaphor for how people.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a bit long. Speaking of French, series out in India. It's called Prime Video. So it's supposed to be sentiments. I haven't watched it, but it's sentiments. And you have millions of who have no, say that the Muslims, the Hindus, Muslims also say the same. But if you Muslims, you would have these words, Hindu, Hindus, they actually don't kill you, you know.
To
This
the
lady,
fetish of
yeah, uh, mentally, it's less actress, right? She India, so she needed to chat about how speech and stuff like that, you know, on Twitter. She's the same now that series, right? Because so, about I quote that how it was viewed by how 200 like that. Two people replied and like stu- stupid, this you will not speech. Okay, now, right? And if I it down to November that we support France, yeah, rights. These people, these small and like ignorant about, and even in my own family, I mainstream this speech is not valued in India. Free speech is, if I go in the states thing like that, be some people that would literally just seeing the thing and would use physical violence on me. So that's the problem, that you have belief that you should be on about religion, and then you still have blasphemy.
instead completely stark naked and have God painted on your naked body want to attack you, they probably won't near you. But
Well, the problem. I was dressed, but the guys would attack me. Now that I'm undressed, who else will attack
very I'm gonna take off the Hangout. It was awesome.
I'm not sure what it'll be next time, but whatever.
These. Peace out.
Later, guys.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. That was Pangburn Hangout. If you want to get involved in conversations, just join us on Discord. Link in the actual video here. I will post it in the chat just to make sure. And it will also be posted in the description of this video on YouTube. There we go. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of the days. And as always, art and science inspire.